While I was on vacation, my phone buzzed with a text from my son. It was brief and to the point. "Mom, we know this is your beach house, but we want to spend time with Karis's parents. Can you please move to a hotel for the rest of the week?" I read it twice, trying to make sense of it. After a long pause, I replied simply, "Understood." And that was when I decided to take matters into my own hands. The shift in the atmosphere came within the hour, and the request I had received from my son, Sterling, set the stage for a sequence of events that would leave his in-laws begging for his divorce. But before we go further into this difficult story, let me ask you a favor. If what I share resonates with you, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment about where you're listening from. It warms my heart to know where my voice reaches. If this story touched your heart, friends, please like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more touching stories. Thank you for being here. Now back to the story. The midday heat in the Low Country is not just the sun bearing down on you. It's the kind of heat that seeps into your bones. The air is thick and still, not a breeze to be found. The scent of dry Spanish moss lingers in the air, and the cicada's constant buzz rings in your ears like a never-ending alarm. Yet here I stood on the terrace of Indigo Point, where the heat felt strangely cold, not from the temperature, but from the tension that hung over the dining table. I stood at the kitchen island, my back to the table, cutting slices of watermelon with an ease that was nearly mechanical. The soft crunch of the knife through the fruit was almost the only sound in the room. This kitchen, my kitchen, had been meticulously designed by me 2 decades ago. I had chosen the tiles, Italian, the color of baked milk, and argued endlessly with the contractor about the countertop height. Every inch of this house was me, my thoughts, my labor. But today, I felt like a mere ghost in it. On the terrace, beneath the shade of the wisteria-covered pergola, sat my son Sterling, hunched over his plate, avoiding my gaze. Across from him were Thaddeus and Zenobia Vance, my daughter-in-law's parents. They picked at the red snapper I had painstakingly prepared with expressions that suggested they were doing the fish a favor by eating it. Zenobia, a heavy-set woman covered in garish gold jewelry, looked at her plate, scoffing. "The snapper's a little dry," she said, not really addressing anyone. She glanced at her husband. "Remember that place in Savannah? The fish was much more tender there." Thaddeus merely grunted, not looking up from his phone. Service was better there, too. But the loudest voice came from Karis. She was sitting at the head of the table, my table, pouring wine as though it was her right. Dressed in a simple white dress that contrasted sharply with her predatory demeanor, she surveyed the scene with the air of a conqueror. "You know, Sterling and I have big plans for this place," she said, her voice grating like nails on a chalkboard. "We're going to tear down this wall here, put in floor-to-ceiling windows, and create panoramic views of the garden." She gestured flippantly toward my beloved rose bushes, which I had carefully nurtured over the years. "These flower beds are too old-fashioned. We need clean lines, minimalism, concrete, glass, and a manicured lawn." Sterling, sitting next to her, flinched and quickly nodded, swallowing a piece of bread. "Yeah, babe, whatever you say." I froze mid-slice, the watermelon's bright red flesh almost slipping from my hands. They were discussing the destruction of everything I had built, as though I wasn't even there. It was as if I was just another object in the background, something soon to be discarded. "Olea," Karis snapped, her tone sharp as a whip. "We're out of wine. Bring another bottle from the fridge and more ice. This ice has melted." She didn't even look at me, simply snapped her fingers in the air as if summoning a servant. The Vances exchanged glances, barely concealing their smirks. In their world, there were 2 types of people, those who are served and those who serve. And I was clearly the latter, just a squatter in my own home, performing kitchen duties for the sake of my son's marriage. I exhaled deeply, counting to 3. Anger was a poor advisor, and I had learned not to let it cloud my judgment. I knew that if the foundation of a house cracks, you can't simply patch it over, but today I had to hold my ground for my son's sake, for the fragile peace I thought I was obligated to maintain. "I'll bring it out right away. I said steadily, my voice betraying none of the storm raging inside. I placed the watermelon on the table, grabbed the empty wine bottle, and retreated into the house. There, in the cool silence of the hallway, I leaned my forehead against the wall. My heart was pounding, but I held it together. Endure it, Olea, I told myself. They'll be gone in a week. You've survived worse. And I had. I had survived much in my life. Construction battles in the 90s, a bitter divorce, economic downturns. But this was different. The slights I had endured felt more personal. And then came the message that would change everything. A request that would force me to act not as a mother, but as a woman reclaiming her life. I returned to the kitchen, pretending to keep busy, though every nerve in my body screamed for action. The smell of the watermelon lingered in the air, a sharp contrast to the sourness that had settled in my stomach. I busied myself with small tasks, tidying up as best I could, but the truth was, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. And then it came, an alert on my phone, a message from Sterling. My pulse quickened as I unlocked the screen. It read, "Mom, we know this is your beach house, but Karis's parents are uncomfortable. We want to be alone with them to discuss family business. Can you move to a hotel for the remainder of the week? We'll pay for it." I stared at the message for a long time, disbelief crawling up my spine. Your beach house? That's what he called it? The words stung more than I cared to admit. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. I wasn't just being pushed out of my home. I was being erased, pushed aside like a forgotten object, and something inside me snapped. I took a deep breath. "Understood," I replied. I could almost hear the sigh of relief on the other side of that text. They didn't expect me to react, not really. They thought I would simply comply, pack my things, and disappear quietly. But that wasn't going to happen. I glanced out the window at the sprawling garden, the roses I had planted with my own hands, the tiles, the countertops, every detail of this house. I had built it all. It had taken years, effort, and endless hours of planning, but more than that, it had taken pieces of my soul. This house was my legacy, and I was no longer willing to be a footnote in the story of someone else's life. I made up my mind in that moment. If they wanted to push me out, I would make sure they would never forget who built this house or who they had taken it from. Without another word to anyone, I walked to my phone and opened an app that had been collecting dust for years. I searched through my contacts and found the name I had hoped I would never need again. Desmond. He was a luxury real estate agent, a man I had known well enough from the past, someone I trusted to handle transactions like this. I hit call and it rang twice before Desmond picked up. His voice was calm, but there was a hint of surprise in it when he recognized my number. "Ulea, it's been a while. What can I do for you?" "I need to sell my house," I said, my voice steady. "Sell? Indigo Point?" Desmond's surprise was evident. "Are you sure about that? I thought this place meant something to you." I paused, the weight of his question sinking in, but the answer was clear in my mind. "I'm sure," I replied. "I need a buyer, and I need them now. The house is worth too much for me to keep living like this." He was quiet for a moment, and I could almost hear him thinking. Finally, he said, "All right, I'll make some calls. Let me see what I can do. It'll take time, but I'll find someone with the cash to move quickly." "No," I said, my tone sharp. "I need someone today, now." Desmond hesitated, but I could tell his mind was already spinning with possibilities. "I'll see what I can do. I'll reach out to a few high-profile buyers. But Ulea, this is a big decision." "I know what I'm doing," I said. "Call me when you have someone ready." After hanging up, I sank into a chair, letting the reality of what I'd just decided wash over me. I wasn't just selling a house. I was severing ties, cutting off the last connection I had with the family I thought I was protecting. But in that moment, it felt necessary. The only way to reclaim my dignity was to let go of the very thing they thought they controlled. I looked at my phone again. Sterling's message still sat there waiting for a reply, but instead of writing back, I deleted it. There was no more to say. As I walked away from the phone call, I could already feel the weight lifting off my shoulders, but I had no idea what the next step would bring, and when it came, it arrived faster than I could have imagined.
The next morning arrived with the promise of change. The sun filtered through the windows in soft golden rays, but the light no longer felt welcoming. The house, my sanctuary, seemed colder, distant, as if it too could sense the shift. I had made the decision to sell, and now I was just waiting for the inevitable to unfold. I wasn't sure what I had expected, but I certainly didn't anticipate Desmond's call less than 24 hours later. Leia. His voice was low, a mix of professional calm and something else, something I couldn't quite place. I have a buyer. He's a developer, wealthy, decisive. He's seen Indigo Point before and is very interested. He's willing to move quickly. We can do this today. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach, but I held steady. The wheels were in motion now. The decision had been made, and it was too late to look back. Set up a meeting, I said, my voice firm. Tell him I'm ready. Let's get it done. All right, I'll arrange everything, Desmond replied. But you should know, this buyer is not like the others. He's different, Ilea. Not someone who hesitates. He's a man who knows what he wants. The uncertainty in his voice lingered long after the call ended, but I couldn't dwell on it. I needed to move forward. I needed to be free. By noon, I was at the realtor's office signing preliminary documents, though I barely registered the words on the page. The deal was moving faster than I had anticipated. I had expected the buyer to be another distant figure, someone who viewed my home as just another acquisition. But as I sat across from Desmond and a sharply dressed man whose presence filled the room like an oppressive weight, I realized that wasn't the case at all. Desmond's introduction was brief, but the man's name, Titus Banks, was enough to make me pause. A developer from Atlanta, he was known for buying up prime real estate with the speed of a shark hunting its prey. And here he was, sitting in front of me, practically oozing confidence as he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. So, this is it, he said with a grunt, his gaze sweeping over the room. Not bad at all. I kept my expression neutral. There was something about him, a certain air of authority that made it clear he wasn't just here to browse. He was here to make a deal, and he expected it to be swift. I'm ready to show you the property, I said, standing. Follow me. We walked together to Indigo Point. I had been here so many times in my life, each step across the grounds more familiar than the last. The gardens I had meticulously designed, the terraces that had seen so many sunsets, the house itself, a monument to years of hard work. But as we approached the entrance, I couldn't help but notice that Titus wasn't looking at it the way I once had. His gaze wasn't one of appreciation, it was transactional, calculating. Not bad, he said again, his voice sounding less impressed than before. But I'm more interested in the deal. I led him up the stairs and through the main doors. Inside, the house felt different, as if its very walls could sense the tension in the air. Titus didn't hesitate. He moved through the rooms with purpose, stopping only to glance at the details as if testing their value. Solid structure, he said, tapping the walls with his knuckles. I can work with this. I led him onto the terrace. The sun was low, casting everything in a soft golden light. There, standing before the vast expanse of the ocean, I felt the weight of the decision settle deeper into my bones. This view, he muttered, barely glancing at it, worth every penny. We stood there for a moment in silence, and I realized that this man wasn't just buying a house, he was buying a dream, one I had built, one I had poured everything into, and yet here he was, treating it like another transaction. You know, I said, my voice low, this house means something to me. Titus turned toward me, his face unreadable. I'm sure it does, but you're selling it, so that's no longer my concern. My concern is making sure I can sell it for more. I swallowed, the taste of bitterness rising in my throat, but I didn't flinch. This was no longer about sentiment. It was about reclaiming control, and I wouldn't let his indifference sway me. I was done being a passive observer in my own life. We sat at the table, signing the papers without ceremony. It was done. The deal was sealed. The house was his. But as I handed over the final document, something unexpected happened. Titus smiled, a broad, almost satisfied smile. "Consider this a favor, Ulea," he said, handing me a thick envelope. "You won't have to worry about a thing anymore. This place, these walls, they're safe. No one will try to take them from you. Not now." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Titus leaned forward, his grin widening. "I saw what you were doing. This wasn't just a sale. It was about letting go, and you needed someone who understood that. So I'll keep this place under my watch. You won't have to worry about anyone coming back trying to claim it." I froze for a moment, surprised by his words. But something inside me clicked. This wasn't just about money for him. He had seen something in me that no one else had. The desire to be free from the past, to leave it all behind. I stood there, holding the envelope, a sense of calm washing over me. The house was gone, but in a strange twist of fate, it hadn't really left me. In fact, it felt like a new beginning. But there was one more move to make, and it was coming soon, faster than I could have imagined.
The deal was done. Titus Banks now owned Indigo Point. It felt like a strange kind of release, though the finality of it left a hollow space in my chest. I had always prided myself on being in control, on building something that could stand the test of time. But now, in the quiet after the storm, the house, my house, was no longer mine. I walked away from the table, the envelope still heavy in my hands. The day was winding down, and I felt the weight of the sun's descent on my shoulders. It was as if the earth itself was pressing down on me, pushing me toward the next chapter, the one I had been avoiding for so long. Desmond, who had been quietly observing the exchange, stood up to leave. "Ulea, you did it. I know this was hard, but it was the right choice. You're free now." I barely heard him, lost in the thoughts swirling in my mind. I nodded, offering a faint smile, but there was nothing left to say. The house, the life I had built here, the endless years of effort, everything was gone. Yet somehow, the more I thought about it, the more liberated I felt. Titus watched me closely as I stood in the doorway, contemplating my next move. His eyes, sharp and calculating, never left my face. "You know," he said, his voice low, "I'm not one for sentiment, but there's something about you, Ulea. You don't strike me as the kind of person who would give up easily. This house, everything you did here, means more than just a sale to you." I met his gaze, my expression steady. "It does," I said, my voice firm. "But I've let go. I needed to, and now I'm moving on." He nodded, as if he understood. "That's a good thing, Ulea. Letting go isn't easy, but it's necessary sometimes. You can't move forward until you do." His words hung in the air as he turned and walked out the door, leaving me standing there. I stood in the silence of the empty house for a long time, taking in the view that I had once cherished so much. The ocean stretched out before me, endless and serene, a reflection of my own sense of release. I walked through the rooms, each one a part of my history, but now they felt distant. The walls seemed hollow. The furniture, though beautiful, looked like nothing more than objects. I had given everything to this place, but now I realized it was just that, a place, and it was time to leave it behind. As I stepped out onto the terrace, I realized that the house had already begun to feel like a memory, fading into the past with each step I took away from it. There was nothing left for me here. I pulled my phone from my bag, tapping the screen to check for any messages. A few notifications from friends and family, but nothing significant. No word from Sterling. No word from Karis. But then, as if on cue, my phone vibrated again. It was a message from Sterling. "Mom, I just wanted to let you know. I've filed for divorce. I know it's late, but I wanted to thank you for everything. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I've been a fool." My heart sank as I read the words, but at the same time I felt a strange sense of peace. Sterling had made a choice, finally, a choice to stand up for himself, to stop being manipulated by the lies of the people around him. I didn't need to say anything back. I just closed the message and tucked my phone away. A part of me had always wanted to be the protector, the one who could fix him for him. But now I realized it was never my job to fix him. It was his journey to make, and I couldn't be there for every step of it.
With that, I made my decision. I was done looking back. I would leave the past behind, the house, the family drama, and the pain that had been simmering for far too long. I would take my freedom, my life, and I would begin anew. As I walked toward the gate, I caught a glimpse of Desmond, standing by his car, ready to leave. I waved to him, acknowledging the role he had played in this final chapter. "Thank you, Desmond," I said, my voice steady. He smiled, giving me a nod of approval. "You're welcome, Eulea. You've got what you wanted. Now go and take it." I gave him a small smile, but there was no lingering doubt. This was it, the beginning of something new, a chapter that didn't include the weight of the past. But before I could take my next step, another unexpected twist was waiting for me. The phone in my bag buzzed once again, and this time it was a call I hadn't expected. Sterling's voice crackled through the speaker, and the drama was quite over yet.
I stood frozen, my hand still on the gate, when my phone buzzed once again. It was Sterling's name flashing across the screen. A pang of uncertainty stirred within me, but I quickly shook it off. This was his moment to own his mistakes, to take responsibility for his life. Whatever he had to say now wasn't going to change my decision. I took a deep breath and answered. "Mom?" Sterling's voice sounded shaky, desperate even, his words tumbling out in a rush. "Mom, I need you. It's a mess. Everything's falling apart. I don't know what to do." The urgency in his tone twisted my gut. I leaned against the gate, bracing myself. I had come so far in cutting ties with the past, but hearing his voice brought me back to the years of sacrifice, of trying to fix things for him, trying to be the one he could lean on. "Sterling," I said, my voice calm but firm, "what's going on? What do you need from me?" I don't know where to start." He paused, his breath ragged. "Karis, she's gone. Dad's cut her off. I'm staying with her parents for now, but I don't know how long that will last. They're furious with me. I feel like I've lost everything." I closed my eyes, feeling a twinge of sympathy for him. My son was broken, confused, lost in a world of lies and manipulations he hadn't fully understood until now. I had been there many years ago when he was still the boy who needed his mother's protection, her guidance. But now it was clear that this was no longer about protecting him from the world. It was about him finding his own way in it. "Sterling," I said, my voice calm but firm, "what's going on? What do you need from me?" I don't know where to start." He paused, his breath ragged. "Karis, she's gone. Dad's cut her off. I'm staying with her parents for now, but I don't know how long that will last. They're furious with me. I feel like I've lost everything." I closed my eyes, feeling a twinge of sympathy for him. My son was broken, confused, lost in a world of lies and manipulations he hadn't fully understood until now. I had been there many years ago when he was still the boy who needed his mother's protection, her guidance. But now it was clear that this was no longer about protecting him from the world. It was about him finding his own way in it. "Sterling," I said, my voice calm but firm, "what's going on? What do you need from me?" I don't know where to start." He paused, his breath ragged. "Karis, she's gone. Dad's cut her off. I'm staying with her parents for now, but I don't know how long that will last. They're furious with me. I feel like I've lost everything." I closed my eyes, feeling a twinge of sympathy for him. My son was broken, confused, lost in a world of lies and manipulations he hadn't fully understood until now. I had been there many years ago when he was still the boy who needed his mother's protection, her guidance. But now it was clear that this was no longer about protecting him from the world. It was about him finding his own way in it. "Sterling," I said softly, but with the weight of finality, "I understand that you're hurting, but I cannot fix this for you. You have to find your own way out of this mess." "But Mom, I can't do it alone." His voice cracked, and I could hear the desperation building. "I was wrong. I should have listened to you. I know I should have." I exhaled slowly, a sense of clarity washing over me. The pattern was always the same: his guilt, his need for reassurance, his constant search for a way to avoid the discomfort of facing the consequences of his actions. And for years, I had given him that reassurance. But I realized that what he truly needed now was not more comfort, but the harsh truth, the kind of tough love that would make him stand up for himself. "You have to stand up on your own 2 feet now, Sterling. No one else can do it for you." I paused, letting my words sink in. "You need to find your own way out of this mess, not by running to me, but by taking responsibility for the mess you allowed to build up. I love you, but I won't be your crutch anymore." I could hear him on the other end of the line, the silence stretching between us like a heavy weight. I could almost picture him, lost in his thoughts, trying to grasp what I was saying, fighting the urge to ask for more of my help. But you're my mom. Don't you think I deserve, I need some support right now. I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry, Mom. I've messed everything up." His words were painful to hear, but I couldn't give in. The only way for him to grow was to face the consequences of his choices, without me stepping in to clean up the mess. I wasn't abandoning him. I was letting him find the strength to rebuild on his own. "Sterling," I said, my voice more resolute than I felt, "you have to stand up on your own 2 feet now, Sterling. No one else can do it for you." I paused, letting my words sink in. "You need to find your own way out of this mess, not by running to me, but by taking responsibility for the mess you've allowed to build up. I love you, but I won't be your crutch anymore." I could hear him on the other end of the line, the silence stretching between us like a heavy weight. I could almost picture him, lost in his thoughts, trying to grasp what I was saying, fighting the urge to ask for more of my help. But you're my mom. Don't you think I deserve, I need some support right now. I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry, Mom. I've messed everything up." His words were painful to hear, but I couldn't give in. The only way for him to grow was to face the consequences of his choices, without me stepping in to clean up the mess. I wasn't abandoning him. I was letting him find a strength to rebuild on his own. "Sterling," I said, my voice more resolute than I felt, "you'll find your way, and I'll always love you, but I can't carry you anymore." The silence between us stretched out thicker than before. Then finally I heard him speak again, his voice quieter, more resigned. "I get it, Mom. I'll figure it out. I didn't know it would be this hard." "I know," I said, my voice softening just a bit, "but this is your life now. I believe in you. You have to believe in yourself, too." With that, I ended the call. The weight in my chest remained, but there was no turning back now. I had done what I could, and now it was up to him to take those difficult steps towards healing. As I stood there, phone in hand, an unexpected sense of peace washed over me. It wasn't the same kind of peace I had imagined when I first sold the house. It was deeper, more authentic, a quiet knowing that I had done the right thing, even if it felt painful in the moment. And then, as if on cue, the door to the taxi stood open in front of me, waiting. The sky above was clear, the early evening light softening the world around me. The house, my house, was now in the past. What lay ahead was uncertain, but I wasn't afraid. I walked toward the waiting car, leaving behind the echoes of my past life. I had done everything I needed to do here. The journey that lay ahead was mine alone. The doors closed behind me, and the car began to drive away. As I looked out the window, the past seemed to slip further away, and the future, filled with promise and uncertainty, opened before me. But one thing was certain. This was only the beginning. The road ahead would be mine to walk, and I was finally free to live it on my own terms.
The car hummed steadily beneath me as I looked out the window, the scenery flashing by in a blur of coastal charm, palm trees swaying gently in the breeze, the ocean glistening in the late afternoon light. It should have been a peaceful ride, but the weight of everything I had left behind still lingered in my chest. The house, the memories, my son, everything felt distant now, and yet it was exactly what I needed. I had made my choice. The house was sold, the past cleared away, and I was free.
free of the suffocating roles I had been playing for years, free from being the caretaker, the enabler, the one who cleaned up after everyone's messes. It wasn't easy to let go, but there was no turning back now. I could feel the first stirrings of something new, something hopeful stirring deep within me. For the first time in ages, I was making decisions for myself. The taxi turned onto the main road that would lead me to the airport. I hadn't told anyone my plans, not even Desmond. After everything that had happened, I needed to take this next step on my own. No more explanations, no more justifications. Just me and the open road ahead. The moment I reached the airport, I felt a sense of liberation. The bustle of travelers, the noise, the unfamiliar faces. It was all a reminder that there was a world beyond the narrow confines of my past. I had a one-way ticket to Rome, a city I had dreamed of visiting for years but had always put off, always deferred for the sake of others. Now I was going, alone, and I could hardly believe it. Hours later, I sat in the waiting area, staring at the glowing departure board. My flight was on time. I was about to embark on a journey that was so much more than just a physical trip. It was a symbolic one, a step toward embracing the freedom I had fought so hard for. I had always dreamed of traveling, of experiencing life in a way that didn't revolve around someone else's expectations. My phone buzzed again, snapping me from my thoughts. It was another message from Sterling. My thumb hovered over the screen, hesitating. I had said what I needed to say. I had offered him the truth, the tough love he needed. But part of me still wondered if I had done the right thing. I opened the message. Mom, I've been thinking about what you said. I know it's hard to hear, but you were right. I need to take responsibility. I've made so many mistakes, but I'm going to fix them. I'm going to start over. I don't expect you to help me, but I hope someday we can talk again. I love you. I stared at the words for a long time, feeling the weight of them settle in my chest. There was so much in that message: regret, resolution, and something deeper, something I hadn't heard from him in years. Accountability. For the first time, I felt like he might actually be ready to grow, ready to face the consequences of his actions. I didn't reply right away. There was no rush. I had given him what he needed, a push, a hard lesson. Now he needed to take the next steps on his own. My role in his life had changed, and I needed to honor that shift, just as he was starting to. The flight to Rome was uneventful. The sky outside the plane window grew dark, and I sank into the soft embrace of the seat, my mind racing with thoughts of the future. I could feel the excitement building, but it was tempered with something else, something I hadn't anticipated, a sense of peace. I was leaving behind everything I knew, the house, my son, the life I had built. But I was also walking towards something new. The possibilities felt endless now. The plane descended into Rome, and as the city appeared beneath me, glimmering lights against the night sky, I felt a surge of something deep within me. This was it. This was my chance to live fully, without the weight of other people's expectations pressing down on me. I was no longer the caretaker, the enabler, the one who cleaned up after everyone's messes. I was just me, Alea Thorne, ready to embrace life on her own terms. I stepped off the plane and into the crisp Roman air, the scent of history and adventure mingling in the breeze. I had no itinerary, no fixed plans, just a loose idea of what I wanted to experience. I was going to explore the art, the food, the culture, the things that had always inspired me but that I had put off for so long. But more than anything, I was going to rediscover myself, to reconnect with the parts of me that had been buried for so long under the weight of everyone else's needs. I wasn't sure exactly what that would look like yet, but I felt a deep certainty that this was the right path for me. As I walked out of the terminal, the city of Rome stretched out before me, bustling, alive, and full of promise. For the first time in years, I felt like I was where I was supposed to be. The road ahead was mine to carve, and I wasn't going to waste another moment. The journey had begun, and there was no turning back. The streets of Rome greeted me with their timeless charm, the cobblestones worn smooth by centuries of history. The city was alive with a vibrancy I hadn't known I was missing. People chatting at sidewalk cafes, the
The hum of scooters zipping by, the faint sense of fresh bread and espresso in the air. For the first time in a long while, I felt alive. I hadn't planned on anything specific, but that felt right. I didn't need a rigid schedule, a list of places to visit, or an itinerary. What I needed was to wander, to explore with no expectation but to simply be present, to let the city reveal itself to me as I moved through it. As I walked through the streets, I couldn't help but marvel at the beauty around me. The ancient buildings, their stone walls telling stories of a time long past. The small piazzas, each one a quiet oasis, filled with laughter, music, and the promise of something new. Every corner held the discovery. I stopped in a cafe to sit, ordering a cappuccino, the smooth crema swirling perfectly at the top. The warmth of the coffee in my hands was grounding, a small pleasure that felt so simple but profoundly comforting. I had always been someone who rushed to finish tasks, rushed to make sure others were taken care of, always rushing to meet the next demand. But here in Rome, I allowed myself to pause. As I sipped my coffee, I found myself reflecting on how much had changed. Leaving the house behind, my son's message, the decision to let go of my past. All of it felt like a weight lifting, piece by piece. For the first time in years, I felt free, not just physically, but mentally. I was no longer tied to a life that was built around expectations. I could now focus on my own desires, my own growth. Days passed and I allowed myself to float through Rome like a leaf on the wind. I visited the Colosseum, walked through the Roman Forum, marveled at the Sistine Chapel. But it wasn't the grand monuments that touched me the most. It was the small moments, the way the sunlight filtered through the ancient arches, the sound of church bells ringing in the distance, the quiet beauty of a sunset over the Tiber River. There was a sense of peace here that I had never felt at home. It was as if the city itself had a rhythm, and for the first time in years, I was in sync with it. One afternoon, as I wandered through a quiet market in Trastevere, I encountered an elderly woman selling handmade jewelry. The delicate silver pieces caught my eye, and I found myself drawn to a necklace with a small, intricately crafted pendant. "Ah, you have good taste," the woman said with a smile, her eyes twinkling. "This piece is special. It brings good luck." I smiled back, intrigued. "Good luck?" I asked. She nodded, her hands deftly wrapping the necklace. "Yes, for new beginnings. I see you are someone starting anew." I paused. Her words struck me, and I realized she was right. I was starting anew. I had left everything behind. The house, the past, the roles I had been playing for so long. And here I was, creating a life from scratch. I took the necklace, a small token to remind me of this moment. It felt like a quiet affirmation, a sign that I was on the right path. As the weeks passed, I began to settle into my new life in Rome. I rented a small apartment near the Spanish Steps, a charming place with tall windows that let in the morning light and a view of the narrow, bustling street below. The pace of life here was slower, more intentional, and it fit me perfectly. I spent my days exploring the city, meeting new people, and enjoying the simple pleasures that had always been available to me, but that I had never allowed myself to truly experience. One evening, I received a message from Desmond. It was brief, just a simple check-in. "How's everything going in Rome? Hope you're doing well." For a moment, I hesitated. Desmond had been a part of my life for years, through the house, through the sale, through all the moments that had led me to this point. But I realized I didn't need his approval anymore. I didn't need anyone's approval. I had made my choice, and I was standing firmly in it. I typed a reply. "I'm doing well. I found my peace here. Thank you for everything." There was no need for long explanations. I had said what I needed to, and I didn't feel the need to justify my decisions any longer. For the first time in my life, I was living for myself.
The days began to blend into one another, and I found myself growing more comfortable in my new rhythm. I still thought about my son, about the family I had left behind, but there was no longer the constant worry, the weight of responsibility that used to haunt me. I had done what I could do for them. Now it was their turn to find their way. One morning, as I walked through the streets of Rome, I passed a bookstore and stopped to browse. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just taking in the rows of books in every language. And then there it was, a book on architecture, one I had seen years ago at a lecture, back when I was still designing homes and buildings. I picked it up, feeling a familiar pull. For a long time, I had put my career on hold. My life had become about taking care of others, putting my dreams aside. But in this city, I realized it wasn't too late. I could still create. I could still build. As I walked back to my apartment, the weight of the book in my hand felt symbolic. It wasn't just about architecture. It was about my life, my future, and the possibilities that lay ahead. I wasn't just moving forward in a geographical sense. I was moving forward with my soul, my passions, and my desires. It became clear to me then that this was just the beginning. The city of Rome, with its ancient stones and vibrant energy, had sparked something in me. I wasn't just living in the moment, I was creating a future. The journey was far from over, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next.
As I settled into my new life in Rome, I realized how much of myself had been lost over the years. I had given so much of my energy to others, my son, my daughter-in-law, even the house, that I had forgotten what it meant to nurture my own passions. But here, in this city that had seen centuries of history unfold, I began to remember the person I once was. I spent my mornings walking through the cobbled streets, absorbing the sights and sounds of Rome. The city had a way of making everything feel timeless, like each day was a page in a never-ending story. I visited museums, art galleries, and quiet churches, all the while allowing myself to absorb the beauty around me. But it wasn't just about appreciating the art of others. It was about rekindling the art within myself. I enrolled in a local architecture course, something I had wanted to do for years but had always put off. The lessons were intense, but they filled me with a sense of purpose I hadn't realized I'd been missing. I wasn't just learning to design buildings again. I was designing my own life, one choice at a time. One day, while sitting in a cafe near the Pantheon, I had a conversation with a fellow student who would change the course of my days. Her name was Isabella, an Italian architect in her early 30s who had grown up in Rome. She was bright, confident, and passionate about her work, and we quickly struck up a conversation about the city and the changes it had undergone over the years. "I always feel so at home here," Isabella said with a smile as she stirred her coffee. "Rome never feels like it's in the past. It's always moving forward, blending the old with the new." Her words resonated deeply with me. I had always seen myself as someone caught in the past, holding on to old memories, old places, and old roles. But I was starting to understand that life, much like architecture, was about balance. You couldn't build something new if you didn't let go of what no longer served you. And in that moment, I realized I was doing just that. Isabella and I spent hours talking about architecture, life, and the future. I found myself laughing more than I had in years, reconnecting with a side of myself that had been dormant for too long. She invited me to visit some of her ongoing projects, and before I knew it, we had become friends, real friends, not just acquaintances bound by circumstance. I started to feel the roots of my new life taking hold. I no longer defined myself by my past mistakes or the roles I had been forced into. I was an architect, yes, but I was also a woman who had faced hardships and emerged stronger. I was someone who had learned to let go, to embrace change, and to live on her own terms.
One weekend, I took a trip to Florence. It had always been on my list of places to visit, and I finally had the time to explore it without anyone else's needs or expectations weighing on me. The city's art and architecture were even more breathtaking than I had imagined, but what struck me the most was how quiet the world seemed when I allowed myself to just be present. As I walked through the Uffizi Gallery, admiring the works of Botticelli, Michelangelo, and Leonardo da Vinci, I thought about my own journey. These artists had created masterpieces not by following others' expectations, but by listening to their own voices, their own desires. And now I was starting to do the same. I returned to Rome with a new sense of clarity. I was no longer simply drifting through life, reacting to events and people. I was actively creating the life I wanted. I began to take on more design projects, some small, some ambitious, but all of them meaningful to me. The work was fulfilling, not just because it allowed me to express myself, but because I was doing it for me. For the first time in years, I felt like I was walking in alignment with my true self. One afternoon, as I sat at my desk in the small apartment that I had made my own, I received a call from Desmond. His voice was warm, but I could hear the underlying tension. "Ulea," he said, after a brief pause, "I've been meaning to check in. How are things? Have you settled in? I hope you're doing well." I took a moment to gather my thoughts. It was strange hearing his voice again. Desmond had been a constant in my life for so long, through the highs and lows, but now I was in a different place. I didn't need to seek his approval. I didn't need to explain myself. "I'm doing well, Desmond," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I've found peace here. I've rediscovered who I am. It's a good place for me." There was silence on the other end of the line, then a soft chuckle. "I'm glad to hear that, Ulea," he said, his voice tinged with genuine warmth. "You were always stronger than you gave yourself credit for." We talked for a while longer, catching up on life and the business. Desmond had always been kind to me, but our conversation was no longer about the past or the house. It was about the present, about how far I had come, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't need to explain myself to him. I didn't need his approval, or anyone's. That conversation with Desmond marked the final piece of my journey towards true independence. I no longer needed anyone's validation to feel complete. I had finally found my place, not just in the world, but within myself. And as I looked ahead, I realized the possibilities were endless. The future was mine to shape, and I was ready to build it.
The weeks in Rome blended into one another, each day unfolding with the promise of something new. My life felt more vibrant than it had in years, and I began to realize how much of myself I had neglected before, how much I had given away, not just to my family, but to the weight of obligations that didn't truly serve me. Now, I was free to discover what made my heart beat, free to explore the dreams I had shelved long ago. I had started to design again, not just architectural plans, but the design of my life. Every choice I made felt intentional. The small projects I took on, redesigning local cafes, helping young designers with their portfolios, were fulfilling. They brought me a sense of joy and accomplishment I hadn't known was possible. I wasn't working for anyone's approval. I was creating for the love of it. One afternoon, as I walked through the bustling streets of Rome, I couldn't help but smile. For the first time in years, I felt truly connected to the world around me. My past, what had once felt like an anchor weighing me down, had become the foundation on which I was now building my future. But just as life had given me peace, it also reminded me that change was constant. A few days later, I received an unexpected message from Sterling. It was a simple text, but the words were heavy. "Mom, I've been doing a lot of thinking. I know I've hurt you, and I'm sorry. I'm getting the divorce finalized. I'm trying to move forward, but I realize now I've been living in the shadow of the past, just like you said. I'm working on myself. I hope we can talk soon." The message sat on my screen for a long time. Part of me wanted to respond immediately, to offer reassurance, to be the mother I had always been. But another part of me knew better. Sterling had to work through this on his own, just like I had to work through mine. I had to trust that he would find his way, just as I had. I took a deep breath and typed back, "Take care of yourself, Sterling. I believe in you." I didn't hear from him again for a while, and honestly, I wasn't sure when I would, but that was okay. The healing I had done for myself had given me the strength to release the need for constant reassurance. My relationship with my son was no longer about me rescuing him. It was about letting him find his own strength, his own path. As the months passed, I became more involved in the local community. I met people who shared my passion for architecture, art, and culture, but most importantly, I met people who were simply kind and curious, people who didn't need anything from me except for my company. I started hosting small dinners at my apartment, inviting new friends and fellow designers to share ideas, laughter, and stories. It felt good to be surrounded by people who appreciated me for who I was now, not who I had been. One evening, Isabella invited me to a gallery opening where a few of her projects were featured. If I walked through the exhibition space, I couldn't help but marvel at the work she had done. Bold, beautiful, and innovative. It was clear that she had found her place in the world, just as I was finding mine. "You're looking radiant, Alea," Isabella said with a smile, her eyes lighting up as she walked up to me. "I can see how much you've grown." I smiled back, feeling a sense of pride well up in my chest. "I feel different, stronger, like I finally stepped into my own life." She nodded in understanding. That's the power of reinventing yourself. It's not always easy, but when you do it, it's worth everything. That night, as I returned to my apartment in Rome, I thought about how far I had come. The woman who was once swallowed by responsibilities, by the needs of others, was now a woman who was finally putting herself first. And it felt incredible. It was late one night when I received a call from Desmond. I hadn't spoken to him in a few weeks, and when I saw his name on the screen, I wasn't sure what to expect. "Desmond," he said, his tone a little hesitant, "I've been hearing some things, and I wanted to check in with you. Is everything okay? I just wanted to make sure you're still doing all right." His concern touched me, but I could tell it came from a place of lingering care, not from the need to control or fix. Desmond had always been someone who wanted to help, but now, I realized, he understood that I didn't need fixing. I wasn't broken anymore. "I'm doing great, Desmond," I said, my voice steady. "I'm exactly where I need to be. Thank you for checking in, but I'm fine. I'm more than fine." He was quiet for a moment, as if processing my words. Then, with a soft laugh, he said, "You always did know how to surprise me. I'm glad to hear that, Alea, truly." We talked for a little longer, but there was something different in the air between us now. It wasn't about the past, or the house, or anything that had tied us together in the past. It was simply two people who had walked different paths, but still cared for one another. As the year drew to a close, I found myself at a crossroads, not because I was unsure of my path, but because I realized there were so many paths ahead of me. The world, for the first time in years, felt full of possibilities. I had rebuilt my life from the ground up. I was no longer someone defined by my past or the roles I'd played. I was Alea Thorne, a woman who had learned to stand tall, no matter the weight of her history. And as I stood on the balcony of my apartment in Rome, overlooking the city that had become my second home, I knew that I was just beginning. There were still dreams to chase, people to meet, and more of the world to explore. But this time, I would do it on my terms. And so, as the new year began, I stood at the edge of a new chapter, ready to embrace everything it had to offer. The past was behind me, but it had given me the strength to build the future I had always dreamed of. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in my life, I was truly excited for what was yet to come. If today's story touched your heart or kept you hooked, you can show your love by sending a super thanks. Your support helps me continue creating more powerful life stories for you. Thank you, truly, for always being so kind and supportive. I can't wait to read your thoughts about this story.
On your screen right now, you'll find 2 new stories that I highly recommend, filled with emotions, twists, and lessons. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe for many more inspiring life stories. Until the next one, sending you love, respect, and gratitude. See you in the next story.